Thank you very much for your paper, Arthur, and I'm very happy you touched on tourism because I'm going to have a sneaky look at that as well. So the paper I'm presenting today is an empirical appraisal of, well, it was under the subcategory of an empirical appraisal of societal initiatives and CSR programs in business organisations. And I was looking at the new shade of green and evaluating the CSR and emerald extraction company in the Zambian Kafubu Emerald District, and this is the case of Gemfields. So I thought it would be good to start off with a little cheeky advert, a little cheeky cartoon. And as you can see, you've got the guy with his head down, who's probably the likes of Mr. Fred Goodwin, the RBS boss, who's currently had his knighthood revoked. Could maybe be Mr. Albert Stanley, who is the former CEO of the US construction company CBR, recently sentenced to a mere 30 months in prison for bribing Nigerian officials to win lucrative contracts, and also pay a hefty Halliburton, which is the parent company, has had to pay a mere $579 million in fine for corruption in Zambia. And I thought I'd start off with this cartoon because this is not what I'm looking at today. Today I'm going to look at an exciting and positive case study for CSR. And I think, as mentioned in the introduction, the pursuit of common good is vital in business today. And after undertaking my fieldwork, which was initially for my master's dissertation, which I did at Edinburgh University for the Centre of African Studies, I came to the conclusion that they have in fact had very, very many positive outcomes from their initiatives, and I think they are one of the front runners for implementation of CSR within this region specifically because, I mean, as Arthur mentioned, it's quite hard to distinguish different areas of implementation depending on the different contexts. So for them specifically, they have been, I feel, successful in the region. So the outline of my paper is I'm going to have a quick anecdote of No Longer in the Dust, which you'll hear about in a second. Then I'm going to look at who Gemfields are and their mining company, Kagem Mining Limited. I'll look briefly at the theoretical framework, but not too much because I'll probably embarrass myself because I'm not an expert. Then I'm going to contextualise Kagem and look at the Zambian legacies, political, economic, etc., and more specifically in the region, because of course that's very important. I'm going to look at then their repositioning strategy, which is what they've termed their CSR implementation strategy. Then I'm going to look at Dunira strategy, so many strategies. Dunira strategy, which is the company I'm currently affiliated with, and have a few concluding thoughts. So, No Longer in the Dust. During my fieldwork, one informant, Dustmarie Ntambila, declared that there never used to be any contribution from the mining companies at all in the region, but now, because of Kagem, they've no longer been left in the dust. Here she's referring to the fact that the roads were very badly managed and upkeep was very poor. There was constant clouds of dust with big mining vehicles travelling along these roads, and I think this anecdote specifically offers great insight into the fact that it does appear that the mineral wealth of the Kafubu Emerald District appears to finally be somewhat returning to the hands and mouths of the surrounding communities because of Kagem's actions, which have gone beyond what is legally required from them as a company operating in Zambia. In jest, I did suggest that maybe her name should be changed from Dustmarie to just Mary, because she's no longer in the dust. That they really enjoyed. So let's have a look at who's Gemfields and as well as Kagem, because Gemfields is the parent company, Kagem is the mine site. So Kagem Mining Limited, or Kagem, is an operational mine that extracts emeralds in the underdeveloped Kafubu Emerald District in the Republic of Zambia. This is an area in Zambia's famous Copperbelt province, which I think, oh no, that's wrong. Oh, I want to go back. Previous. I'll show you a little map in a second. And this Kagem is 25% owned by the government of Zambia and 75% owned by Gemfields PLC, which is an alternative investment market, so AIM listed and based in London. They have operational responsibility for the mine. So Gemfields has attempted to implement an inward-looking and outward-looking strategy for Kagem, which it is labelled as the repositioning strategy. And because Gemfields acquiring of the mine site, there was when they acquired the mine site, there was limited and in some cases non-existent contribution of the mine's profits to the surrounding regions. So thus, the main intention of the strategy is to convince investors, customers and other stakeholders that it has relocated in the market as a world-leading gemstone company that is a supplier of ethically produced Zambian emeralds that can be traced directly from mine to market. Gemfields have accomplished this by upholding fair trade practices, while remaining in accordance with the highest level of environmental, social and safety standards. So as I mentioned, I initially undertook this research for my master's at Edinburgh University at the Centre for African Studies, and what I initially looked at was the attempts of Gemfields and also to determine to what extent their efforts, which are most definitely unique to the area in which it operates, offers new insight into the CSR literature. So numerous subsidiary questions that have relevance here are what constitutes CSR and the aspects that relate to the study, what are the circumstances under which the Gemfields CSR strategy is being implemented at the Kagem mine site, what constraints have hindered the repositioning strategies, and ultimately have Gemfields developed a new shade of green. Overall, my research revealed that the attempts of Gemfields have been valiant, and of course as the reason I submitted my paper for this workshop was because I do feel it is an empirical appraisal of positive business in society, good contribution of business in society. So just to give you a little look, that's some of the beautiful jewellery produced with the ethical emeralds. That's in the sorting house with the emerald I'm holding is one of their grade A emeralds, very beautiful. This is one of their production pits called Fwaya, and this is a Mademoiselle who they like to use in the adverts, and that's just a pure emerald necklace. So for my theoretical framework, which I'm just going to brush over, because as I mentioned, I'm sure I'll put myself to shame because of the experts in the room. But yeah, so CSR has gained much strength and propelled in growth and dispersed its influence in academia, business, nation states and multinational corporations. This has led many, such as Hopkins et al., to argue that CSR is one of, if not the most important issues of our time. The business role in society has undergone various transformations and been moulded due to the pressures it's received from various factions, and thus business has been required to adopt a more ethical approach with regards to their involvement in surrounding societies and their impacts on environment. So throughout my paper, I utilised prominent secondary data to develop my theoretical framework, and this was in a manner that highlighted the factors relevant to Gemfields' CSR strategy. And I looked at the historical progression of CSR and the very imperative roles, especially within the mining sector, that NGOs played in pressuring business to alter their modus operandi. And then finally, I also considered the different initiatives that have developed from these pressures, etc., by governments, so like the UN Global Compact and the various white papers written by European Parliament, the economic bodies catering specifically for investment by socially responsible firms, such as the Domini 400 Social Index, the FTSE for Good, and the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. I looked at this very relevant for the mining case studies. I looked at the Transparency and Responsible Trading Initiatives, which is, for example, Publish What You Pay, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the Mining, Minerals and Sustainable Development Project, and Ethical Trading Initiative, as well as BankTrack. So this theoretical analysis led me to conclude that CSR companies constitute, and this is the definition that I adopted for my paper, was that they're complying with the minimum requirements of the law, conduct their activities in an environmentally sensitive manner, pay their taxes in full and on time, respect their employees and pay and treat them fairly wherever in the world they may be based. And for companies operating in the mineral extraction sector, these become quite interesting due to some of the inherent qualities of the sector. So these include the aspect of environmental degradation, which is of course very obvious in the photo that I just showed you. It's especially in the gemstone extraction sector, which is exceptionally large scale and quite harsh on the environment. And another aspect is the socio-political qualities, so which have been highlighted in empirical studies undertaken by the likes of Ross, Collier and Humphreys, which highlight that countries that are predominantly reliant economically on the export of primary commodities, for example Zambia, are at a higher risk of poor economic growth, political instability and armed conflicts. That's seen, I know specifically Africa, Nigeria, Angola. And then, as Sachs and Wana argue, in turn, the abundance of mineral extractions could actually be a curse for a nation. So the mineral extraction by foreign companies can result in, this is another problem that we came across, can result in reduced access to and the quality of natural resources that are quite important to sustain the livelihoods of the surrounding communities. So this access substantially decreases, and the subsistence farming, etc., that people rely on for their income and livelihoods is no longer available. And whilst these opinions do hold true in other cases, as will become evident, they are not entirely relevant to Gemfields because of the strategy they've implemented. And the operational situation in which Gemfield's CSR strategy is being implemented, so the setting in which they're implementing it in, is very favourable for CSR, and this is, as I'll explain, due to the political and economic legacies of post-independent Zambia, and most importantly, this includes the nationalisation and privatisation of major sectors of the economy, which includes mining. So let's have a look. This is just some slides showing environmental degradation, and this is a 40-ton truck, which just looks like a small toy car in the fire pit. And these are the extraction vehicles that they use. Those are the yellow ones. So let's look more closely at the contextualisation of Kagem. So post-independence, which was 1964 in Zambia, there were high expectations and much optimism for the prosperous development of the Republic of Zambia. Much of this confidence was definitely justified by the remarkable successful mining sector, and at independence, Zambia had one of the highest GDPs in Africa. It was 3 times higher than that of Kenya, twice that of Egypt, and higher than the likes of Brazil, Malaysia, Turkey and South Korea. The new president, so the post-independence president, Mr. Kenneth Kaunda of the United National Independence Party, known as UNIP, spearheaded the Zambian humanism political philosophy, which he believed would ensure the development of the thriving state, building upon and progressing the greatness that they already had. This philosophy called for the nationalisation of major sectors and aimed to direct the profits of newly nationalised mines towards developments such as building hospitals, schools, universities, education, and providing subsidies to state-owned manufacturing companies and suppliers. So considering that the profits considering the copper prices were at an all-time high during this period, it allowed Zambia to achieve fiscal revenues of 25%, so copper prices contributed 25% to the GDP, which in turn allowed the government to invest heavily in economic and social infrastructure. And while Zambian humanism did have numerous social development successes, due to the gradual decline of the economy and external shocks such as the 1974 copper price crash, these were not absorbed by the economy or counteracted by the fiscal policies that they had introduced, so the nationalisation policies. And as you can imagine, the copper belt's exceptionally rich in minerals. It hit the population hard, and Zambia wanted change. So in response to this, they went the other way and elected Chiluba's movement for multi-party democracy, which came into power in 1991, and they turned everything on its head and introduced the Privatisation Act in 1992. The effects of the Privatisation Act were very far-reaching, and they caused exceptional unemployment because nationalisation had increased employment and employed many people within the mining sector. Privatisation, desiring increased profits, decreased the amount of labour employed. And the state also, the MMD, had also withdrawn the abundant support that they had previously supplied. So, as you can imagine, there was a big gap in the market, and the population of Zambia were used to receiving their development assistance from the government, and now, due to privatisation and private companies in charge of mines, they did not enact the same amount of development. So this is evident as well in the governance of the mineral extraction sector. And the changes in political ideologies as expressed from nationalisation to privatisation altered the governance of the mine. And between the mining companies and government, there was a huge, the MMD had not delegated, oh, private companies, you're expected to do this much social development. So basically we had a big gap in the market, and inevitably the influences of this on the Kafubu Emerald District, which used to be high and mighty because of the good profits from the mines, was now at an all-time low. So what's imperative to note from this is that Kajem's operations are situated amongst a population that has been disappointed by the non-performance of mining. The state failures, there's been the state failures, and they've remained on external forces such as aid for development assistance, because it's not been provided from the state to mining companies. There's a massive gap. They haven't forgotten the big sacrifices they made, and they're unaware of who to hold accountable for the demise of their living standards. So on a positive front, both formalisation and privatisation of the emerald extraction sector led to quite a rejuvenation of the value of emeralds, and there is still big optimism within the region about the benefits of what emeralds can still bring to the region. So that's the setting of where the Kajem Mining Limited is operating, and that's just quickly a map to show you the copper belt, which is the lightest colour, central. Okay, so now let's turn to the actual repositioning strategy of the mine. So when Gemfields incorporated Kajem, it inherited numerous challenges, and the need for vast improvements was immediately obvious. They undertook I'm running out of time a bit, so I'm going to actually just go straight to their different strategies. Okay, so they undertook internal, which is inward-looking CSR, which was the conditions of the mine and on the mine, and then outward-looking, which I'll discuss next, which is within the community and the environmental aspects. So overall, they had a heavy load to shift because the conditions they inherited were exceptionally dire, and as I mentioned before, there was no non-existent CSR policies of those who previously owned the Kajem Mining Limited site. So during an interview with the general manager, Mr. Suresh, he attempted to lend some insight into how bad the conditions were, and it was hard to imagine because of obviously being around the mine site. I saw that it functioned very well and was very respectable. So there was a mining debris backlog whereby mine rubble had sporadically littered the mine site, and he said that the yellow caterpillars, which were the construction vehicles you saw, were like dead around the site, and it was just really inefficient, and it did not help with rock handling capacity. So these challenges were rectified through creative solutions such as the filling of old pits, developing designated dumping sites, or improving or entirely replacing old mining methods with new techniques. And resultingly, substantial improvements ensued with rock handling capacity, which was improved by 3.5 times, which in mining terms is very impressive. And ore mining rate improved, as well as the fact that mining expanded underground and has delivered very exciting production. And yeah, the main efforts of the on-site mine conditions were that they improved the treatment plant capacity, which is where they treat the emeralds. They advanced the sorting house's grading system so that there's a reliable grading system of emeralds produced and released on the market. And they actually got some electricity because previously the mine had run on generators. And they invested in their own construction vehicles, whereas previously they had been rented. So the general infrastructure was also improved, such as the mine workers' accommodation quarters, the mine site clinic, and the development of the recreational facilities such as the gym and the football pitch and cricket pitch. And when I was there, I watched an interdepartmental football tournament, which was very exciting, and the underground managers won that. So the outcome of these changes boosted morale in the mine and also resulted in formal job contracts, which is very important, as well as the unionisation of 385 employers, which was as a result of a $1.2 million investment. So it went from 19 unionised workers to 385, which is great. So just briefly, I'm going to look at the small factors that have undermined the success of the inward-looking strategy, but these are quite negligible in my opinion, and have not necessarily substantially undermined the successes that they've had. So these include, firstly, the increase in foreign labour on the mine site, which happened when Gemfields took over Kagem, and they introduced highly respected and very reliable Indian workers who, well, primarily from India, who went into middle management positions in geology, mine management and exploration. But the problem with this has been that they've not, and some of the criticisms that came out from our stakeholder interviews was that they've not actually integrated entirely within society, and there's quite a bit of tension. For example, one interviewee said that they eat dal instead of nshima. Nshima is like the local mealie meal that they eat, and they said that they found that quite offensive. So that's one problem. And the second problem, but overall, I think this, if it's not dealt with in the future, may become a sticking point, but it was quite negligible. The second thing is the security structure, which was totally overhauled, and given that the government has 25% of the shareholding of Kagem, they offer a Zambian police force platoon which assists with on-site security. And the problems that arose from this and during my interviews was that there was slight discrepancies between the management structure, and there was a lack of trust from the Zambian platoon to the in-house security. But then again, like, security on the mine has improved from the theft of from 25 to 30% of production to 15%, so it's decreased by quite a substantial amount. Right, let's go on. That's just some photos of the underground and the sorting house, and that's just the vehicles that they've purchased. Ooh, okay, the reality of the repositioning strategy, and this is their outward looking aspects. So the let me just see. The most successful projects to date include the Sustainable Environmental Blessings Farm Project, the Febolele Fishing Project, and the Zero Carbon Footprint Initiative. So those are environmental ones, and then their social ones are the development of 2 schools and 2 clinics called Chipula Basic School, Kapila Community School, Nkana Clinic and Pilala Clinic. An evaluation of these initiatives and the great successes they've had confirm the immense positive corporate work that Gemfields has undertaken. The Blessings Farm project is, I think I've got some photos. Yeah, the Blessing, as seen in the top left, Blessings Farm providing basic farming necessities, equipment, sprays, fertilisers, and also in the process of assisting them with developing a reservoir, because obviously water is quite a scarce commodity. And the mining manager expressed that they're so proud that Kagem's come on board, because without them they would never have been as successful as they are. And part of the sustainable initiative is that Kagem actually purchased products from the mine site, which is located 5 kilometres down the road, and thus not only are the farmers able to have subsistence in terms of producing their own food to eat, but also an income. The Febolele Fishing Project, which is the top right, is an environmental degradation reversal initiative, and this is an old extraction pit that Kagem used to work on. It's humongous, and they've filled it, implemented. They've put some fish spoor into the dam, and local community members are able to come and fish on there, and also if they fish more, then they're able to sell it on. But like the Sustainable Farming Initiative, they're able to generate some income as well as sustain their families. The social development projects, and these are the two photos from the bottom, are the schools, and Chapula School has 877 scholars with a total of 29 teachers, and then the smaller Kapila School has 186 scholars and a total of 3 teachers, and these are both supported substantially by CAGEM, who provide books, have developed the buildings. Like, they still need some paint on the inside of that classroom, but they built the whole structure. And then that's Ruth, one of the nurses from the clinic, and the 2 clinics they support are the Nkana Clinic and the Palala Clinic, and at both of these they assist with mosquito nets, condoms, basic amenities, and she's standing in the maternity wing, which CAGEM facilitated and built, and it was much needed because there wasn't one, so beforehand it was a bit of a mess. And finally, the last project is the Chief's Palace, which they've assisted with regeneration. So traditionally, if visiting chiefs come and visit the chief of a region, they are required to stay in an external housing unit, not attached directly to the main house, which CAGEM's built for the Nkana chief. So now he can have all his friends visiting from the surrounding regions. So overall, as is evident, the successes of the restructuring strategy have been great, and this has been reflected by the popularity increase for CAGEM, with its pieces of jewellery being worn at the Oscars, including a $2 million necklace, and the World Land Trust, Emeralds for Elephant Projects, which is very popular, is utilising emeralds within their elephant designs to raise funds. 25. Oh. All right. I was briefly going to look at the alternative market, which was the illegal sector, but I'm not sure that I have time. That was just their final initiative. Right, sorry about that. If you want to ask me about it later, feel free. So I'm finally going to look quickly at Dunira Strategy, which is the company I'm currently working for, and was appointed as research manager at this company post my MFC. And this is an independent marketing, PR and training consultancy with a focus on sustainable development and environmental management of tourism. We deliver sustainable business solutions and have considerable international experience. Let me have a look. Those are the aspects that we work with. So our expertise lies in facilitating enduring partnerships between stakeholders, and we have particular experience building local capacity for sustainable development through tourism. Our key strengths lie in developing and applying practical tools that promote sustainability in travel and tourism. And to this end, our team of sustainable tourism consultants, which I am one of, works with clients and partners in public and private sectors. So that's now, and that's just a map of all the projects that we've worked on across the world. So in conclusion, very briefly, Gemfields as well as Dunira lend much insight into companies who actually entrench good corporate behaviour into their corporate strategies and endeavour to ensure that their actions are sustainable, beneficial to communities in which they operate and continually, voluntarily transcend the requirements of the law in the country in which they are working. And thus, yes, a new shade of green has been developed. Thank you. Sorry, that was a bit long.